Okay, so like imagine this. You're trying to get dinner on the table, right? And your kid is just glued to their video game.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
ask them to turn it off.
Yeah.
Meltdown City.
Yeah.
Been there.
Well, yeah, many of us, I think, are pretty familiar with that scene.
I know I have, that's for sure.
For sure.
So today we're going to do a deep dive into what's called anti-dopamine parenting.
Okay.
And we're going to try to give you some real strategies for handling these situations.
Right.
Based on neuroscience, so we can maybe make dinner time a little less stressful.
Yeah.
Think of it as a cheat sheet
Yeah.
for what's going on in your child's brain.
Yeah.
And even maybe your own.
Right.
So we're going to be looking at this conversation from the Dopamine, Desire, and Digital Devices podcast.
Okay.
It's called A Neuroscientist's Guide to Parenting.
Interesting.
And it really breaks down how dopamine is driving these intense cravings, for screens and junk food and all that stuff that our kids just can't seem to get enough of.
And one of the interesting things about this podcast is the way that they kind of debunk this myth that dopamine is just about pleasure.
Yeah.
It's really more about wanting something, that I need it feeling.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
You don't even seem to be enjoying it anymore. They just need it like they're hooked or something.
Right.
It's so strange.
You can think about it as the difference between enjoying a video game, which I think we all can, and feeling like you absolutely can't stop playing it even when you know you should.
Right.
That's that dopamine urge kind of taking over.
Okay, so how does that dopamine urge turn into, the dinner time meltdown? Because I've tried everything, timeouts, taking away privileges, but it feels like I'm fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, and I think that you're not wrong to feel that way. The thing is, dopamine evolved to help us survive, right? It makes us, want to get food, find connection, things that we actually need.
Yeah.
But then junk food and screens, those trigger these same pathways, even though they're not essential for survival in the same way.
So you're saying my kid's brain is basically tricked into thinking that Fortnite is as important as water?
Kind of, yeah.
Well,
Like the brain is responding to that dopamine signal as if it's just as essential.
right.
And I think that's why saying no to a child, especially when it comes to something that triggers such a strong dopamine response, can feel like you are depriving them of something that they need to survive.
It's like their brains have been hijacked. No wonder those conversations are so intense, and I always feel like the bad guy.
Yeah, and I think that that's a really important point.
Yeah.
It reframes the situation, right? It's not you versus your child.
Right.
It's both of you versus a hijacked neural pathway.
Mm.
And I think that that's what this podcast really calls anti-dopamine parenting.
Okay, I am so here for this. So what's the game plan? How do we actually parent in a way that works with this dopamine-driven urge?
Yeah, so the podcast highlights two main tactics. One is environment design,
Okay.
and the other is habit makeover.
Okay.
And I think they start with environment design, which is essentially creating these micro environments that are free of the things that trigger those dopamine surges.
So no screens in the bedroom. That's what I've always heard.
Yeah,
Out
exactly.
of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. It's about making it less accessible. So they're not constantly being stimulated by it.
Right.
If it's not right there in their face, it's less likely to trigger that craving.
Okay, that makes sense. But, kids are crafty.
Right.
They always find another screen, they'll go watch something on their iPod or something like that.
And the podcast actually addresses this directly.
Okay.
It's not just about the physical access.
Right,
It's
okay.
about those notifications, right?
Oh, yeah.
So those pings and alerts on our phones and all of our devices.
Oh, yeah.
Those are literally designed to hijack our attention. It's these little dopamine hits
That's true.
that keep pulling us back in.
Yeah, I get sucked into those all the time myself.
Yeah, exactly.
That for sure.
So a practical tip from the podcast, turning off those notifications
Okay.
for everyone.
Right.
Create those tech-free zones, not just in the physical space,
Right.
but in our digital space as well.
Okay. That's a good tip. I like that. I can do that.
Yeah.
But it's not just about taking stuff away, right?
Right.
What about this habit makeover?
Yeah, so it's about replacing those habits that lead to those dopamine surges with healthier alternatives.
Right.
So instead of constantly saying no to screens, you offer alternative activities that are engaging but don't trigger that same dopamine rush.
Okay, but sometimes I feel like I'm just taking away all the fun.
Sure.
What can possibly compete with the excitement of a video game?
Right, and I think that's where a little creativity comes in. And remembering that what might seem boring to us might actually be really engaging to our kids.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast had this great example of this mom who swapped out cartoons
Okay.
for this language learning app, and her daughter actually ended up losing interest in screens altogether.
Wow. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. I never would have thought about a language learning game.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's about finding those healthy alternatives that work for your child
Mm-hmm.
and your family.
Right.
And remember, it's not just about screens.
Mm-hmm.
These strategies work for food, too.
Oh, yeah.
Think about those sugary treats.
Right.
Another huge dopamine trigger.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right.
Constant battle with the snack monster over here.
It's like they're practically designed to trigger those cravings,
Mhm.
but we can use those same anti-dopamine strategies for food as well.
Okay, so environment design, I'm guessing, is like keep the sugary treats out of sight, high up in the cupboard or something.
Exactly.
Okay, easy enough.
Yeah.
What about like habit makeover for food? How does that work?
Yeah. So instead of buying those pre-packaged cookies,
Mm-hmm.
try baking a healthier version together.
Oh, that's a great idea.
You know, involving your kids in the process not only creates a fun activity,
Right.
it also builds a sense of ownership and pride,
Mm-hmm.
which can make those healthier choices more appealing.
I love that it's like a win-win. We get
Okay.
to spend time together, they learn something new, and they're excited about healthy food.
Exactly.
All right, I am feeling hopeful. This is all making a lot of sense.
Good.
But I'm a little worried about, those situations where temptation is kind of unavoidable.
Right.
Like, what about birthday parties?
Yeah.
Can't really control what other people are serving.
And you shouldn't have to.
Right.
I mean, remember, this isn't about perfection.
Right.
It's about progress.
Right.
You're not trying to create like a bubble for your child.
Mhm.
You're trying to equip them with the tools to make those healthy choices, even when faced with temptation.
Right.
And that's where understanding the role of dopamine comes in.
So, like, if I know that my kid's brain is basically screaming cake at that birthday party,
Yeah,
I can be more understanding about their behavior.
exactly.
Okay.
It's not about shaming them or making them feel bad. It's about acknowledging those cravings, helping them understand why they're feeling that way,
Right.
and giving them the space to make informed choices.
Okay. So it's less about controlling the situation and more about, like, empowering them to navigate it.
Exactly.
And honestly, I need to work on that too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just as susceptible to those dopamine-driven cravings as my kids are.
Well, that's a really important point. I think, we as adults struggle with this too.
Oh, yeah.
Think about how easy it is to get sucked into like endless social media scrolling.
Totally.
Or how tempting those sugary snacks can be.
For sure. I'm totally guilty of that.
Even when we know we shouldn't,
Yeah, yeah.
But if we can start applying these anti-dopamine strategies to our own lives,
Mhm.
we can set a good example for our kids.
Right.
We can be in it together.
Yeah, absolutely. Leading by example is so powerful.
Right.
It's about showing them that it's possible to live a good life without constantly being like bombarded by those triggers.
Yeah,
It's about finding that healthy balance
exactly.
and making choices that support our well-being, both like physically and mentally.
I agree.
Okay, I am feeling so much better now. This is great. This has been such a great conversation.
Good.
It's been so eye-opening.
Good.
I really feel like I have a whole new perspective.
Uh-huh.
It's not about willpower.
Right.
It's about like working with our brains, understanding the science,
Yeah.
and using that knowledge to make, informed choices.
Exactly. And it's about remembering that it's not about being perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's about progress, not perfection.
Right.
It's about showing up for our kids,
Yeah.
even when it's hard,
Right.
and supporting them as they navigate this, complex world
Totally.
filled with all this temptation.
This has been fantastic. I feel like I've gotten so much out of this already.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
One thing that really struck me in that podcast was how much emphasis they put on the language we use with our kids.
Oh,
When
yeah.
we're talking about these things,
Yeah.
it's not just about saying no all the time.
Right. That's such a crucial point. The language that we use can really change how our kids perceive the situation.
Mm-hmm.
If it's always no, they just feel deprived, and that builds resentment.
Yeah, totally. Like they're constantly being told what they can't have, and it makes them want it even more.
Exactly. But if we can shift our language, focus on the why behind our decisions,
Right.
it helps them understand that we're not just being controlling.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from a place of caring about their well-being.
Yeah. Okay. So give me an example. Instead of, no, you can't have cookies before dinner. What would be a better way to say that?
Yeah, you could say something like, I know you love cookies, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's okay to want them, but let's save them for after dinner so we can enjoy them even more.
Mm.
You're acknowledging the desire.
Right.
You're validating your feelings.
Right.
But you're also setting a clear boundary.
That's good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, you're working together.
Yeah, it's much better.
Instead of against each other.
Mm.
It's about finding that balance.
Right.
Between setting limits and respecting their autonomy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's important to remember that this whole anti-dopamine parenting thing is an ongoing process. We're not going to get it right every time.
Of course not.
There will be meltdowns. There will be days when we feel like we're failing.
Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes I'm just like, am I a bad parent?
I think every parent has those moments of self-doubt.
Yeah.
But it's about remembering that this isn't about being perfect.
Right.
It's about progress.
Yeah.
It's about equipping ourselves with these strategies, these tools,
Right.
so that we can navigate those challenges more effectively.
Yeah. And giving ourselves a little grace.
Totally.
We're all learning. We're figuring it out as we go.
Yep.
There's no manual for this stuff.
For sure.
But having this understanding of dopamine, how it plays into these behaviors,
Yeah.
that gives us like a whole new lens
Right.
to view these challenges through.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it's great.
And one of the biggest takeaways for me from this whole deep dive is just the emphasis on empathy.
Mm-hmm.
When we understand that our kids aren't intentionally trying to be difficult,
Right.
that their brains are literally wired to crave these things,
Right.
it just changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah, suddenly those meltdowns make a lot more sense.
Exactly.
It's not about them being defiant.
Right.
It's about their brains, like literally trying to get those dopamine hits.
Exactly. And when we can approach those situations with that understanding, with that empathy, it helps us respond with more patience,
Right.
more understanding.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing them as the adversary,
Right.
we can see them as like teammates in this journey of learning and growth.
It's like we're all in this together,
You do.
figuring it out as we go.
And we can learn so much from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Parenting in the digital age comes with a unique set of challenges.
Oh, for sure.
And we don't have to navigate them alone.
Right, right.
There are resources out there. There are support systems, people who have been there and done that.
Yeah, I think sometimes we feel like we have to do it all ourselves.
Yeah.
But it's so much easier when you have a community, whether it's friends, family, other parents who are going through the same thing.
For sure.
You can share tips and tricks, and you just know that you're not alone in it.
And sharing those experiences, both the successes and the struggles, that's where the real learning happens. It normalizes those challenges.
Right.
And it just reminds us that everyone's going through this in their own way.
I love that.
Yeah.
This whole deep dive has been like a game changer for me.
Oh, good.
I really have. I feel like I have all these new tools in my toolbox now.
Good.
And remember, it's not about eliminating all temptation or controlling our kids' every move.
Right.
It's about understanding the science, making informed choices, and creating an environment where our kids can thrive. You've said this a couple of times now, and I just love it. Progress, not perfection.
That's a good one.
I'm going to have to write that down.
Yeah, that's a good mantra.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true.
And what's fascinating is this whole concept of anti-dopamine parenting. It's not just for kids.
Yeah, that's right.
It applies to all of us. We, as adults, are just as susceptible to those dopamine-driven cravings.
Oh, totally. Social media is my downfall. I can get sucked into that endless scroll for hours.
For sure.
And then there's the snacking. It's like, I know what I should be doing, but my brain wants that instant gratification.
What's fascinating is that by applying those same anti-dopamine strategies to our own lives, we're not only improving our own well-being,
Right.
but we're also modeling those healthy habits for our children.
It's like actions speak louder than words.
Totally.
Our kids are always watching us.
Yeah.
They're learning from our behaviors and our choices. So if we can show them that it's possible to live this balanced life without being ruled by those dopamine cravings, we're giving them like the greatest gift we can give.
Exactly. It's about creating a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Those small changes that we make in our own lives, they can have such a big impact on our kids and those around us.
It's about shifting the culture really towards mindfulness and intentionality.
I agree.
And, making choices that support our long-term well-being.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Small changes can make a big difference.
Right.
Maybe it's starting with a screen-free hour each day, or swapping out a sugary drink for a glass of water. Every little step counts.
Yeah, I love that it's about building those healthy habits one by one,
Exactly.
finding what works for you and your family, and celebrating those small victories along the way.
Absolutely. And as you start experiencing the benefits of those changes,
Yeah,
you'll be more motivated to keep going.
right.
It becomes a positive feedback loop.
Hmm.
The more you practice those healthy habits, the easier they become, the more rewarding they feel.
And, you don't have to do it alone, right?
Mm.
There are so many resources out there.
So many, yeah.
Books, podcasts, online communities, support groups.
Yeah, there's a wealth of information and support available.
It's all about finding what resonates with you, what you need, and your goals.
For sure.
And don't be afraid to reach out for help if you need it.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no shame in asking for support. In
Mhm.
fact, I think it takes strength
Right.
to recognize that we don't have to do this all on our own.
Sometimes just talking about those challenges can be so helpful.
Oh, for sure.
Makes you feel less alone, more understood, and just more empowered to make those positive changes.
It's about normalizing the struggle,
Right.
recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and we all have room to grow.
Yeah, that's such a good point. We're all works in progress, right?
Yeah,
And it's those imperfections, those challenges that make us who we are.
I agree.
And as we embrace those imperfections, we can model that for our kids too.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
And it ties back to something that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
The importance of modeling a healthy relationship with technology and with our own dopamine systems.
Mhm.
It's one of the most important things we can do
Totally.
for our kids.
They're watching us, learning from our behaviors, our choices.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can show them that it's possible to live a balanced, fulfilling life without being ruled by these cravings,
Yeah.
we're giving them such a powerful example to follow.
It's about teaching them that true happiness and fulfillment, it comes from within, connecting with others,
Yeah.
pursuing our passions,
Mm-hmm.
making a positive impact on the world.
It's about helping them find that inner compass
Yeah.
that guides them toward those things that really matter.
And it all starts with understanding the power of dopamine, learning how to work with it,
Mm-hmm.
not against it,
Right.
taking control of our choices
Right.
and creating a life that aligns with our values.
It's about finding that sweet spot, right?
Mhm.
Where we can enjoy life's pleasures, but also make those choices that support our long-term well-being.
It's a journey worth taking for
Yeah.
ourselves and for our children.
So as we wrap up this part of the deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave our listeners with this thought, and it was
Yeah.
something that really resonated with me from the podcast. The most important thing we can do for our kids is model a healthy relationship with technology and with our own dopamine systems.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And it really hit home for me because, like you said, it's not just about the kids.
Yeah,
It's about us, too.
for sure.
We're the ones setting the example, whether we realize it or not.
And it ties back to that idea of reframing the battle, right?
Mm.
We talked about how it's not us versus our kids. It's both of us kind of facing this challenge of managing our dopamine.
Right. It's like we're on the same team.
Yeah.
Instead of constantly like butting heads with our kids,
Right.
we can approach it more like we're their guide,
Mm-hmm.
helping them navigate those tricky neural pathways.
Yeah, like coaches or mentors, whatever analogy works.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, it's about empowering them to build those self-regulation skills that they need
Right.
to make those healthy choices on their own.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice? Like, how can we actually guide them without, being controlling?
I think it starts with just creating a supportive and encouraging environment.
Mm-hmm.
Make those healthy choices easy and appealing.
Okay,
Have fruits and veggies readily available.
right.
Keep those sugary treats out of sight.
Mm-hmm.
Limit those dopamine triggering screens as much as possible.
So it's not just about telling them what to do. It's about creating an environment where those healthy choices are kind of the default option.
Exactly.
Like, if there's a bowl of grapes on the table,
Yeah,
they're more likely to grab that than to go digging for cookies in the cupboard.
exactly.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's about having those open and honest conversations with them
Mm-hmm.
about those cravings.
Uh-huh.
Help them understand why they're feeling that way.
Right.
Explain the science behind it in a way that they can understand.
I think that's so important. Instead of just saying, no, you can't have that,
Right.
we can actually explain, hey, your brain is really wanting that sugary treat right now because of how dopamine works.
Right.
But let's find something else that will give you energy and make you feel good without that sugar crash.
Exactly. You're teaching them to be mindful of their own bodies and brains, which is a skill that will serve them well
For sure.
throughout their lives.
Yeah.
It's empowering them to make those informed choices instead of just reacting to those impulses.
And sometimes it's just about being present, listening without judgment.
Yeah.
And offering that, loving, supportive presence.
Sometimes that's the most powerful thing we can do.
Yeah.
Just be there for them, validate their feelings, let them know they're not alone in this.
And remind them that we're not perfect either. We struggle with this stuff too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's important to acknowledge that this journey isn't always going to be smooth sailing.
Oh, no.
There will be ups and downs, setbacks, and triumphs.
Right.
That's all part of the process.
It's like learning to ride a bike.
Right.
You're going to fall a few times.
Yeah.
But you get back up, you keep practicing, and eventually you find your balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about embracing those imperfections and learning from those experiences.
Right.
And it's about celebrating those small victories along the way.
Yeah, because those small victories add up over time, right? It's not about, radical change overnight.
Totally.
It's those little steps forward, those moments of progress
For sure.
that lead to lasting change.
And before you know it, you've built this foundation of healthy habits and resilience that will support your kids for years to come.
And that's what it's all about, right? Giving them the tools to navigate this world and make choices that support their well-being.
It's about empowering them to live healthy, happy, fulfilling lives.
Yeah, that's a legacy worth leaving.
It is.
This has been so great.
Okay.
I've learned so much. I'm so grateful for all of your insights.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
And I know our listeners are walking away with some really valuable takeaways, too.
I hope so.
And remember, everyone, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
By learning from each other, sharing our successes and our struggles, we can create this more mindful, intentional world for ourselves and for our kids. So as we wrap up today, I want to leave our listeners with this challenge.
Yeah.
What is one small step you can take today to start outsmarting dopamine in your own life?
Yeah, love it.
Maybe it's putting your phone away during dinner, choosing a piece of fruit over that sugary snack, or just taking a few moments to just breathe and connect with the present moment.
Absolutely.
Choose something that feels doable, something you're excited about, something that aligns with your values.
For sure.
And remember, every small step counts.
Exactly.
It's progress, not perfection.
It is.
And share your experiences with us.
Yes.
We love hearing from our listeners.
For sure.
What are your anti-dopamine wins?
Yeah.
What are you struggling with? Let's create a community of support.
Yes.
Where we can learn from each other and celebrate those victories together.
I agree.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into anti-dopamine parenting.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We hope you found it insightful.
I hope so.
And empowering.
Me too.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep learning, keep those brains happy and healthy.
Love it.